here as it's getting ready to go live. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Positive Vibe. I told you guys I had a great man that's going to be speaking on today. I have here with me, not with me, but he's with him, and he's in his place of business. I am in the studio here. This is Positive Vibes with your girl Trey Lou and Kevin McNeil. This man is amazing. We had a power talk yesterday and a little bit this morning, and we're going to get to know exactly all the things that Kevin has done and why the 12 project is so important to him. So Kevin, I will allow you this opportunity to share with everybody in Positive Vibes world. First, before I do that, let's give a Positive Vibes shout out this morning. Okay. Let's give a positive word on this morning when you woke up. Okay. What was going through your mind when you woke up this morning? In a positive manner. Yeah. Just for somebody that needs some positivity. That's what we do here on Positive Vibes.
Yeah, I woke up, and thinking, today's another great day I get to see. And there's so much going on in the world, but there's so much to look forward to as well, knowing that, God is always working behind the scenes at everything. And so when I woke up this morning, as I always do, I take a moment to kind of breathe and kind of not, rush into the day. And just, I think the positive thing that I can relate to people today is that God is still working things out in your favor, and that no matter what happens, you have an opportunity to change the course of your life by a decision. So it's positive in that your decisions determine your trajectory. And so I knew that when I woke up this morning, I had a decision to make, and God gave me another opportunity to get it right. So that's what made me and motivates me every morning.
Amen. Well, Kevin, let's talk about this 12 project and what made you pick 12 and why not the 10 project? Why not the 8 project? Yeah. Why the 12?
Well, 12 project is 12 is a symbolic number. 12 stands for justice. I really got it from scripture, to be honest with you. I was reading Matthew 10 and 1 and 2. And that's when Jesus summoned his disciples and he gave them the power to get rid of abusive spirits, to heal people. And I was thinking, wow, that was the real mandate that Jesus gave his disciples. Those 12 disciples, think about it, was 12 disciples, and Jesus summoned them. And also 12 is a number of restoration and justice. If you notice, we got 12 jurors that sit on a jury that determine justice. There's 12 hours in a day. There's 12 months in a year. And then one of the things that I guess we'll get into later, the very significant thing that happened to me when I was 12 years old, when I was walking home from school, I was kidnapped, raped, and nearly murdered at the age of 12. So I named it the 12 Project because that's when my life shifted. That's when my life changed. And so what I wanted to do is do something that would not only be symbolic of what I went through, what I survived, but also what Jesus and God's mandate for us to do with our lives. No matter what happens to us, no matter what happens in our lives, we all have a responsibility to uplift everybody else, So I lived, I survived through it. Many people weren't as fortunate as me. And so I have a responsibility and accountability to take what I've learned, take what I've been through, and bring positive change into the world. So that's where the 12 Project comes from.
So then let's talk about what happened. You were raped, almost killed, and you were coming from a friend's house. You chose to, go through some cut roads like a lot of kids do today.
Yeah.
And this happened. So how long did it take you to identify really what happened to you? I mean, I know you knew that day that something was going terribly wrong, but were you holding yourself at fault and why were you? What faults were you holding yourself at?
Yeah, I felt guilty because one, I took a shortcut that I shouldn't have taken. And the other reason was, I was taking that shortcut because my mom told me to get home before dark. She was letting me go to my friend's house to lift weights. I was bullied as a young kid. I was a small fellow and I was bullied a lot. And I thought if I lift weights, I became intimidating. People wouldn't bully me. But I didn't have a weight set. And my mom couldn't afford a weight set, having 4 other children and being a single parent. And so she allowed me to go out to school to lift weights with my friend who did have weights. And the only rule that I had to follow was, get home before dark. As kids, we sometimes don't listen to parents. And so it got late and it was dark. And I tried to cut some time off, for my journey. And by doing so, I encountered this man who probably was following me the whole time and encountered me. And he knew exactly what to say to me when he encountered me. He told me he had stolen some weights out of the gym. How ironic was that? A young kid who wanted his own weight set. This guy knew exactly what to say to me. And so He told me if I would follow him down into the stadium, he would give me some of them. However, when I got down to the stadium, things changed, and that's when my life shifted forever. He beat me first, and then raped me, and then got on top of me and began strangling me and tried to kill me. I did fight him off, ran all the way home. I was missing my shirt, my shoes, my jeans were mixed with blood and mud. And my mom saw me and she asked me what happened. Being a male, African American male, and growing up in a culture where, toughness and manhood is one of those things that you always try to, communicate. Particularly growing up in the rough hood of Memphis as I was, I couldn't show any sign of weakness. So I couldn't tell my mom that this happened to me because I didn't want to get out. And so I lied and told her I was robbed, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what happened. And I never told the truth. My mom never called the police because I begged her not to, because I thought they would get the truth out of me. So I went on living my life. And the ironic thing about that, Trey, is that at 14, I went down into that football field, that same football field, and played football, high school football in that same stadium for 4 years and walked past those same bleachers where it happened to me. And not once did I think about what happened to me.
Wow, well, praise God for that. Now, quick question I have for you now. When you said that you were lifting weights with your friends, do you remember? Do you have any remembrance of this person, like when you were in the school or going to the school or anything, for him to have that knowledge about you wanting to do weights?
No, he was an adult male, probably in his 30s, so he would have had no reason or business being around our school. Really didn't know him at all. And my friend, I stayed in Memphis where there was a lot of projects, right next to each other. So I would have to walk from my friend's house through the projects, and he may have saw this little boy walking, and I didn't see him, and he may have been following me the whole time, and probably cut me off and saw that I was taking that shortcut and thought that was the perfect time to. And I guess my physique probably gave it away too, because at that point I've been lifting weights for a while, and I was a little muscular, and so to be a little kid. And the irony about that is me lifting weights allowed me to fight this guy off. I mean, think about that. If I hadn't been, I'm a 12-year-old fighting off an adult male. And so those weight training, those weightlifting sessions really helped me out. Unbeknownst to me, it would come to the aid of my life at some point.
Amen. Now, do you know have they caught this gentleman who did this to you? Not even a gentleman. Have they caught this monster? I can't call him a gentleman.
No. I never reported him. I never reported him because I never told my story. And the irony with that is when I got older, I joined the military. I never told my mom either, right? So there were stories of a guy who was going around trying to assault boys, and I always wondered, was that my guy? Was that the same guy? So
that's what I'm getting at. Did it happen again to some other children in your area?
Yeah, I'm thinking it did, because my mom told me there was, when I left for the military, shortly after, there were kids who were found, I think, abused, and I think at one point one kid was found murdered in a field, a boy. And I don't know if that was him per se, but for me, that always went back to my mind, like, was this the guy? And I still think that, how many other boys or people that he assaulted? And, that survivor's guilt kick in. You have that survivor's guilt, like, man, maybe I should have told, maybe I shouldn't. I could have saved a lot of other people. But, at the time, being 12, being a male, growing up in a certain culture, that was very difficult for me. Even now, it's difficult.
Amen. Also, too, I have a question. Now, has any of those guys that are young men that have been assaulted in and around the area that you were assaulted, have they tried to reach out to you? Do you know?
I had one reach out to me. I had one guy reach out to me. And the reason he reached out to me, because, I was molested later from a track coach. I ran track for the high school who, there's a whole other story. And this track coach invited me to his house and invited the team to his house. When I got there, nobody was there but me. And, he tried to molest me. And the thing was, my rape had already happened. I was, so that wasn't going to happen. So I fought him off. And I quit track. Those behaviors that most people don't listen to from children. When children do these drastic changes of behavior, most of the time we don't ask why they did it. We blame them for doing it, and that's what happened. I quit track, and people blame me for quitting the sport that I was good at. Just so happens though that this track coach stepson ran track with us. And when I started telling my story, he contacted me on Facebook and said, "Hey, I need to talk to you." You
Wow.
know, so I was always wondering what happened between him and his stepson. But he contacted me through Facebook, and we tried to connect, but we never did. We kept missing each other. So, but I do wonder if that's the reason he is contacting me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I just hope that I hope and pray that there's not. Well, there may be someone listening right now that say, "Hey,
Yeah.
you know what? You know, that happened to me in the world. What area did it happen to you in the first place?"
I was in Memphis, Tennessee, behind Booker T. Washington High School, Crump Boulevard, and Danny Thomas in that area. And so it was. I can't recall what year I was 12 back then. I don't want to tell my age. 12 minus 48.
Hey, I'm hands off of that. You know,
So,
hey,
so that was
you hands
36
off
years
of that.
ago. So yeah, 36 years ago, and yeah, and believe it or not, that trauma is still with me after 36 years. It doesn't go anywhere.
I
Um,
bet.
Apology. Yeah.
And what about the second time with the track coach?
Well, with the track coach, it happened when I was in my junior year. And he showed up out of nowhere and wanted to assist, and that's the thing I'm real big on now with organizations that don't vet people who they let inside the organization when it comes to giving them access to children. This guy just walked up on the track field, said he used to run track and he wanted to help the coaches coach us, and nobody thought that was suspicious. But he was very religious, and I think he was even a pastor at some point, and so no one thought anything of it.
Mm-hmm.
But again, going back to, I was that still kid after I was raped and nearly killed. I was still that shy kid. I had no father figure. I didn't know my father, and so predators, they know how to choose their victims, and he chose me out of all the victims because he knew I was the one who was probably searching for male leadership and male mentorship. And, because he had a predatory mindset, he knew what to look for. So, and it was one of those things where it was surreal, where I trusted this guy. And the interesting thing about it was when I quit track, he came up
Mm-hmm.
to our house. He came up to my house, and I decided to join the military because he had got me scholarships at certain colleges for running track.
Mm-hmm.
But I quit. So I guess that put his reputation on the line, that he vetted me to go to these colleges, and then I just all of a sudden quit. Nobody knew why. So he came to my house and tried to get my mom to get me to change my mind about joining the military. And I heard him downstairs, and I came downstairs, and I was like, "Get out of my house! I don't want you here." And you know how parents are, black parents are. My mom said, "Who you think you're talking to? You don't
Hey,
talk to."
why are you being so rude? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I was told to get back upstairs, and I was going to get it. But again, that's why I started the 12 Project, to educate people. When children behavior change, I quit one of my favorite activities. One of the things I was good and talented at that could have got me a ticket out of the ghetto. Nobody asked why. They just assumed that I was being a bad kid and I was being, belligerent towards an adult. But, you know, inquisitive minds would have asked, well, what happened to make you
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden, because this guy used to come pick you
Belt
up.
out like that.
Yeah, yeah, you know what I'm saying? So that's why I'm so passionate about what I do now, educating the world and the communities about the effects of abuse and some things to look for when it comes to traumatized children and how they can kind of pay attention. Because a lot of times we hold children responsible to stop their own abuse, because until they say something, nothing is done. And even when they do say something, we question them, right? We question the victim, but we give the suspect the benefit of the doubt. So that's one of my passions right now.
So, and did you say you hid behind some uniforms? You were also a police officer, a
Oh yeah,
detective, and things like that. So,
yeah,
how did, I guess when we talk about from the police perspective, I know you've probably handled and also had to maybe arrest even some people that were traumatized in many ways. How have you been able to be a little bit more open-minded as to the people that may have to be arrested because of some crimes that they have committed ignorantly, and because they have dealt with some trauma in their
yeah.
lives?
That's interesting, because that took me a while to get to that point. Because before then, I was closed off, disconnected from who I was. I was still hiding behind these uniforms, and that's one of the things the patterns I discovered when I went back to my healing process that I always hid. Like Adam, I covered myself in uniforms. I played football. I joined the military. I became a police officer. I went to Master Divinity School, became a minister. So I was always hiding. And it wasn't until late in my career that I became educated about trauma and abuse. The police department never trained me on it. They just told me to put people in jail, right? They never taught me or trained me on victimology. And so once I learned about victimology, I started looking at people differently. Even people who I was prosecuting and taking to jail for certain crimes. I went back to that childhood. I worked 6 serial rape cases here in Atlanta. One of the things that made me great at solving these rape cases, and I got confessions for most of them, and none of them went to court, was because I knew how to deal with the suspect. I knew how to deal with the hurt child inside of them first, rather than going after the grown man that was sitting before me. So my understanding of abuse and trauma helped me in a lot of cases. Even when it came to victims, it helped me not to interview victims the way police were accustomed and trained to. Instead of sitting in front of the victim, I sat beside the victim, right? Instead of asking them the who, what, when, where, why questions, I was more interested in them rather than what happened to them. And so most police departments teach you, puts people in jail, but they don't teach you how to get justice for the victims, right? And so the goal is with most police departments to make an arrest. And when we do that, we actually use the victim for that goal. We use the victim to get information, and the victim feels that they can sense it. Human trafficking victims, people who tell you will investigate human trafficking victims don't like to cooperate with police, and not because they don't want their help. It's because how police departments treat them in their pursuit of the person that's trafficking them. So but that's another goal that I started the 12 Project, because I gave up my badge and gun in 2017 because they wouldn't allow me to train and really do it the way I want to do it. And so I decided to stop being a police officer and stop responding to abuse. Stop and just, respond, putting people in to heal people.
That's awesome. And, just recently, just recently, about 170 people in Florida were charged with trafficking people down in Florida. Did you hear about that?
I didn't hear about that. No.
Yes, wow. It was about 170 people were charged. It's a whole bunch, and they're multicolored people in Florida that in Tallahassee that were charged with trafficking people. We know that trafficking is basically it's modern day slavery.
Oh yeah.
And people are, it's just a lot of things that people go through, and it's an estimated 403 million people who are victims of human trafficking worldwide.
Yeah, and people don't understand that. We look at the R. Kelly case. Most of the cases that get the notoriety, people think it's a 1 in a million chance that this can happen, but it's happening every second of the day. It's happening right now while we're talking. Somebody somewhere is being held against their will and being sold. I want people to think about how bad that is. That you don't know who's going to come to your aid. You're afraid to reach out for help, and then you're getting raped repeatedly. Even though people try to say, and try to put it in the mindset of the public that these people want to do this, that don't want it, they're being forced into it. And so can you imagine being raped multiple times a day, day in and day out, and not even
against your will?
Yeah. And so, and then being in plain sight and nobody notices, so there's no aid coming to you. There's no help coming. And so the people that do, are tasked with the helping of you, they don't know how to treat you when you finally do get in that care. So it's one of those tragedies where we have to do better.
Amen. And it does say that I looked up some notes, and it says every 9 seconds in the United States, a woman is being beaten, raped, or sodomized, or just trafficked against her will. And out of the 9 seconds, there's about 10 million American children who are exposed to domestic violence each year. And now that we have COVID, now that COVID is in, there's a lot of children that are forced to stay home because of COVID. There are children that are in broken house homes. There are mothers that had to stop working, got a job, had to stop working, fell to drugs, being depressed, distressed. And they have brought in some complete strangers in their houses because they didn't know how to just be able to be with themselves or just know the Lord. They just didn't know God and didn't know how to sustain themselves emotionally. And so they invited these strangers into their homes. The children are there trying to get their work done, and they have this stranger Bob walking around, and they're afraid. And there's just kids at a numerous rate numerous rate being victim of
Oh yeah.
child abuse, rape, and
Oh yeah.
also just being taken against their will. There's
Yeah.
even babies that are involved, as early
Oh
as
yeah.
like 9 to 10 months, under a year.
Yeah, and the thing about that, what most people don't understand, your brain wires itself to the environment that it finds itself in. The most so, if you're in an abusive environment, your brain wires itself to that environment. So what ends up happening, you go to survival mode. The survival part of your brain kicks in, and it becomes the bully of your brain. So the part of your brain that plans, strategizes, and learns and focus is not really engaged and not really online. So what happens? It makes it more difficult to learn. And so we look at kids in school and wonder why they're not learning properly. It's because something is happening in the community, the environment. When you have to live in a traumatized environment, culture for most of your life, you're more concerned about survival than you are about planning and
Hmm.
planning. And so that affects the Black community and the other community that has this going on, because now when I get older, I'm not thinking about my future. I'm thinking about my right now. So I'm more impulsive. I'm making decisions that affect my right now, but they also affect my future. So that part of the brain, survival brain, is more concerned about survival, which leads to more impulsivity, which leads to more reaction, and which leads more people to make decisions that are not healthy and that are not great for them in the near future. So it's causing our future to be very dark if we don't deal with this problem now. I tell people that the balance we see on today is the abuse and trauma that we ignored on yesterday. And if that is an indicator, then we're in trouble for the future. And so one of my other sayings is the best way to get rid of a ghost is to listen to it. Right? Ghosts make noise because they want to be heard. They want to be recognized as being present. And so what has happened is we've ignored trauma and abuse for so long. Now the ghost is showing up in violence. It's showing up in
Hmm.
human. It's showing up in all this divisiveness in our communities. And we're dealing with the symptoms and not the cause, right? And here's the thing that I often tell people too, is that sickness is a business. Those in power benefit for us being sick. And so they keep us sick and they prescribe us medications for the symptoms, but they don't want to heal the cause. And that's why I believe God has called people like me and you to come and heal the pain. Therefore, the symptoms can go away.
Amen. And you know what, too,
Yeah.
also, I really, what really touched me with a lot of the police brutality and things that are going on. And you have
Hmm.
officers that are out there that are, that, are pulling over individuals and for whatever rhyme or reason, and don't really
Hmm.
know the background of these individuals, as well
Yeah.
as when you were saying, when you were a police officer and you were
Yeah.
dealing with people that you had to arrest and they had traumatic experiences, but you
Yeah.
knew it because those are some of the things that you had observed and you had felt within
Yeah.
yourself. So it
Yeah.
sounds like, the reform, to reform police and to have them actually have to not live these things, but have to get more trained in regarding the
Yeah.
mental state of different individuals and different races and different colors, because we know that people of different colors and different races have different mental things going on in their lives. And now with COVID,
Yeah.
and I don't want to speak this into existence, but with
Mhm.
COVID going on, there's going to be, and I guess you would say like 10 plus years from now, there's going to be different issues when it comes
Oh
to
yeah.
a mental state,
Yeah.
PTSD, things like that. It's not like when when you were in church and, back in the day, or I say pre-COVID, when,
Yeah.
someone would sneeze, it was like you would say immediately, like, God bless you, or, or you
Yeah.
would just immediately hand somebody a napkin. Now,
Yeah.
when someone sneezes, and I've seen this happen time and
Yeah.
time again, and I've done it,
Yeah.
when someone sneezes, you're backing away like, wait a minute, hold on.
Yeah.
Are they okay? Or,
Yeah.
and it's just the reaction as to what's going on today. I
Yeah.
remember, and I don't want to get off course here, I was in Walmart with my son and we were in there with our mask, and
Hmm.
I'm very observant when it comes to my son and myself being out, just because of all the things that are going on in today's world. And I
Yeah.
heard this big, "Ashoo," but you heard
Yeah.
it. You heard that there was so much air that came out of the sneeze. I
Yeah.
grabbed my son. I said, "Let's go," because if this thing is airborne, we're not going to be in Walmart and this be the day that this person decides that they just want to sneeze and
Yeah.
let it out. I mean, we've all been taught to cover your mouth and, when
Hmm.
you sneeze, the mannerisms of those type of things. But
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I was teed. I was so mad. I was pissed.
Yeah.
I got out of there and just we got in the car. We used hand sanitizer. So
Yeah.
back to the fact that these police people are being arrested and they don't know the behaviors of some of
Hmm.
these people that they are arresting, and some of them are being killed, and
Yeah.
all types of things are going on just because they don't know the behaviors. Now I know
Yeah.
that just some of the things that I've been through, not been through, been through and seen that if somebody's acting a certain way, there's certain things that have gone on, or they may have been raped, they may have been touched, or they may
Yeah.
have been bullied, or they may have been, or lost a job, or whatever the case may be. There's ways to approach them in a way to where it won't be a negative thing that happens behind it. So it sounds like that
Yeah.
could be part of the reform program.
Oh yeah, and Nelson Mandela said something that was powerful. Nelson Mandela said education is the most powerful tool you can use to change the world. And so a lot of police officers are not educated on mental illness, and neither is the community. When I grew up, mental illness meant crazy. It meant someone talking to a pole and talking to
Mm-hmm.
themselves, right? But mental illness is really when your brain does not operate in the way that it's designed to. And anytime you're traumatized, here's the thing: we don't get to determine how trauma affects a person. The person brain does. Trauma is a normal response to an abnormal situation. So if you and I can go through the same thing, it may traumatize me, it may not traumatize you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what happens in that state is my brain begins to actually reorganize itself. And so the brain starts reorganizing itself. So now instead of seeing the world as a welcoming, safe place, I now see the world as a dangerous place. That's mental illness, right? That's not healthy. That's not healthy to think someone's out to get you every minute of the day. It's not healthy to think that alcohol and drugs can cause me to live better and numb my pain. That's not healthy. So that's mental illness. So we have to broaden our scope of mental illness and not go by some DSM manual that determines the prescription and the diagnoses from a professional. We have to understand that we have to do the work, and we have to be cognizant of ourselves, and we have to educate ourselves in our communities what mental illness is, particularly in the African American community. We have to heal. We have more to deal with. We have this trauma passed down from generations of slavery that nobody wants to
Mm-hmm.
talk. We can't pray it away. We can't praise it away. We have to encounter it, and we have to deal with it. If not, we're going to pass it down to our next generation, just like it was passed down to us. So we have work to do, much work.
Absolutely. And you know what, too, another thing that I think that a lot of people don't realize is we've had, and I know in my family, there's a lot of soldiers, servicemen that are
Mhm.
in my family. And we had went through this period of, Desert Storm and all these other
Mhm.
type of wars that were going on. And our young men
Yeah,
and women were over there fighting these storms and
yeah.
come back home with different type of disabilities and mental illnesses. And these are
Mhm.
people that are in society and that are working in places and that are on the police force that are,
Yeah,
are securing the building, that are retired
yeah,
teachers that are just all over the place, and they are not given a lot of help. I've
yes,
worked in the Department of Veteran Affairs for a couple of years,
yeah,
and I've seen, and I
yeah,
thank God that He's used me to be able to communicate with some. I mean, I've seen veterans walk around with a missing ear, half a leg, and things like
yeah,
that. The only thing that they want is someone to listen to them and to be open to what they went through and to hear their stories.
yeah,
I sat around and heard my uncles and my cousins' stories about them being in Desert Storm and
yeah,
wars and World War III and things like that, and that's fulfilling to them. And they just want someone to listen. They're not as crazy as people would say they are. I mean, they're injured. They have
yeah.
some wounds.
Yeah,
I
their
mean,
brain is doing their job. It's doing what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to respond and react to situations. War is not normal, right? Waking up every day hearing gunshots is not normal. That's not normal. And so when the brain experiences those things, it does its job, which is it starts reshaping and reorganizing itself to survive in whatever environment it finds itself in. And what I'm about to say should scare your listeners, right? It should scare your listeners really bad. I was a police officer with a loaded gun, and I was mentally ill for most of my career. And
wow.
so I was traumatized. Think about it. I never told anybody about what happened to me as a little boy. I joined the military. I went to Kuwait, right? I was bullied. I never got help for any of those things, but you gave me a loaded gun and told me go out here and deal with people who were mentally ill. So you wonder why police officers are now dealing with things the way they're dealing with them because we're not trained. First of all, we're not given the help that we needed to deal with.
Wow.
Everybody comes from different backgrounds. Nobody asked me on my application, do you suffer from trauma? Are there any traumatic experiences in your past that we need to know about? Do you need mental help? No. In fact, in my career, I actually got into a police shooting where I shot a guy who had just murdered somebody and I got into a car chase with him. You know what the police department did? They sat me down and said, how you doing? I said, I'm fine. They said, okay, return to duty. Right? So it was no
Wow.
concern about my
That
mental.
hurts.
Yeah, it wasn't a concern about my mental capacity. The concern was about putting me back on the street with that loaded gun, and putting a butt in the police car. And so that should scare people. And it's police departments all over this country that do the same thing. Police departments are not adequately trained to handle mental illness or really the public. They think force and law can handle everything, and force and law cannot handle the problems in today's society and culture. Today's
Wow, that's
culture and
amazing.
society has complex problems, even more so complex now that this COVID thing is happening. And so until we get the proper training, we're in trouble.
And you know what? It's very, that was very scary, and it scares me just to know. And I do have a lot of police officer friends in my circle, and I've just always had that rapport with police officers since I was about 9 years old. I remember this gentleman, his name was Officer Friendly. He came to the schools and he taught us about
Uh-huh.
stranger danger and a lot of things. And
Yeah,
he had much respect in the East End area. He was a
yeah,
great guy, and I've always kept a great rapport. He was always real. I don't know if he was like military. I don't know. I was young, and he was just a police officer, which I respected. And I think a lot
yeah.
of other people did. Now,
Mhm.
what is amazing is, as just a corporate person working, I've completed applications going into behavioral health companies and having to
Mhm.
answer a 4 to 5 page document in regarding behavior and things like
Yeah.
that, like that. And for you to tell me that what you just did, I'm just totally like,
Oh yeah.
I'm amazed, and I this so wonder. I mean, this really just puts the shine, or
Oh
this
yeah.
just puts the eye on why things are happening to police
Yeah.
officers, or why police officers are acting the way they are acting. Because
Yeah.
when you say that you were a police officer and you were mentally ill, because of the trauma that you had went through. Now, it could have been any day that you were out there patrolling the streets and this
Mhm.
person walked up to you looking
Mhm.
like the person that did that to you, and you just jumped and
Yeah.
did whatever you did to go into that protection mode, and
Yeah.
anything could have happened.
Yeah. And that's the thing most people don't understand. I mean, you can ask yourself right now, you can go to any police department in this nation, ask them, how many therapists do you have on duty? How many therapists do you have available to your officers and your detectives? You probably rarely find any. And so the thing is, they show you what a priority is. You got men and women in uniform with loaded guns who are stressed every day, who have lives themselves. And so if you're not giving them the proper attention, not giving them the proper health care days, for one, they're overwhelmed with the work. Secondly, they don't have the resources to do the work. You know, most police departments in this country, they're undermanned. They don't have the manpower to do the job. They're overworked. Most police officers, including myself when I was police, had 2 and 3 extra jobs. So we would work a 10-hour shift, get off and go work another 4-hour shift somewhere else to do security. And so they're tired. And when you're tired, your brain doesn't make good decisions. On top of that, you don't have anybody to talk to about your problems because you don't want to bring them home. So who do you talk to about a bad day, right? So you talk to other police officers who going to tell you their day was just as bad as yours. Y'all compare worse. So you find ways to cope, like drinking, sex. You find ways to cope. And so I think,
So
for your listeners, I think the positive thing out of this is that when these things are happening, it's bringing attention to what needs to be done and corrected, and that's the positive thing. And that's another thing that the 12 Project does: educate police departments on trauma, child advocacy center on trauma. That's my big thing. My tagline for my company is educating the world on the effects of abuse. My goal is to bring the effects of abuse out of courtroom and classroom into your living room, because these are the people that need to know about it the most, not just people who are professors and writing books. That's not helping us if the people who are raising that child don't understand that if I bring my child into an environment and that environment is abusive and trauma driven, then my child's brain is going to wire itself to that environment. And so it's going to make it more difficult for my child to learn. It's going to make it more difficult for my child to be in relationships. It's going to make it more difficult for my child to plan their future and have a great future. And once parents understand that, they understand
mhm.
that parenting is more than just putting food in the child's mouth and a roof over their head. It's developing a culture so that the child can grow. This is what the Bible means when it says, raise a child up in the direction that they should go. Create an environment. If you think about it, when you think about the Bible, God created culture before he created man. Why? God is showing you the significance and the importance of culture. Because, if I got to build a culture, because if I put a man in a bad culture, it's going to destroy him. So I have to build a culture that's conducive for the health of the person. And the same thing happens to families. And so, nature teaches us that as well. I'm in Georgia. Palm trees don't grow in Georgia because the culture's not going to do, but they grow in Florida, right?
Mhm.
So what goes grows, right? Culture determines what goes, and culture determines what grows. So when we start talking about that violence and trauma and abuse, we have to not only change the actions of people, we have to change the culture in which has allowed this action to become prevalent.
Absolutely. And we're not just talking, when you say abuse, a lot of times people think about abuse and they think of it being just physical abuse. We're talking
Yes,
mental abuse. We're talking mental abuse. We're talking all types of abuse,
neglect.
verbal abuse, neglect, and things like that as well. There's kids
Yeah,
that, I've seen this happen where, one thing I can say is when I was in and around, I'm a family oriented person, but I've been in places where kids or over people's houses where there was a
hmm
lot of verbal abuse and things like that.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
wasn't used to it. And I would come home
yeah,
and I didn't tell my mom because I didn't think it was something that I needed to tell, but she would say,
yeah,
"Hey, are you going to go over such and such's house today?" And I'm like, "Nah, I don't want to go." I would just say I didn't
yeah,
want to go over there because I didn't
yeah,
want to be around. I just wasn't used to pots slamming, cursing, doors slamming. I wasn't used to that type of thing. So I
yeah.
just stopped from going over there.
But
Those things
yeah,
can hurt too.
that's true. And you know what I miss most, Trey Lou, and I think you know the sales of this item. If we increase the sales of this item, we probably can improve our family. The kitchen table, right? How
Mm-hmm.
many of us eat around the kitchen table? And that's where you found out what things were happening in your child's lives, right? That's when you have these conversations, like how you feeling, how you doing in school. You know, that's when your children were able to tell you. And in fact, growing up, I never heard the words "I loved you." My parents thought that I assumed it because they fed me and they put a roof over my head. And so oftentimes what ends up happening is, we get these young daughters, these young sons that go out into the world and somebody mentions those three words to them. But it didn't come from their parents first. So they get infatuated with this person and they end up in an abusive relationship because "I love you" is the catchphrase that people use to draw people in, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you've never been told that before, if you've never been shown that before, then you don't really know what it means. So when someone said it, you don't even know the true meaning of it, if it's authentic or not. And so I tell people, if you want your children to get A's in school, give them A's at home first. Affirmation, approval, affection. That's where the A's come from. They don't come from when they go to school and look in the books. They come from home. And so I think we have a long way to go, but I think we're in a good place. I think God has us where we need to be. And I think shows like yours and I think conversations that we're having now, I think they need to be had because they have been silent in the future.
Absolutely. And you know what, too? I wanted to put this out there that, being a parent, and I made sure that, when my son and we had Friday night time, and not
Yeah.
only just him, I would grab him or grab a friend of his, and we would have Friday night time, and we would go to Fridays, and instead of going to Fridays and having like happy hour time, I would
Yeah.
have my happy hour time was spending time with my sons, my nephews, or anybody that was in his circle. We would go there and I would let them go get appetizer crazy. We would have our little
Yeah.
non-alcoholic beverages, but that was the time
Yeah.
when I would sit there and I would get into their brains and I would try to find
Yeah.
out what's going on. Well, and it would be funny because sometimes they would look at me like, "Auntie, you said that?" And I'm like, "Yeah." So one time, and I'll be real
Yeah.
brief about a funny situation, how we can open up the children. And then when they see
Yeah.
that you're open up to them and that you're listening to them, that you love them, they'll be
Yeah.
more open to you. Now,
Oh
this one
yeah.
particular time, it was with my son and it was with one of my nephews. And
Mhm.
we're eating at Fridays and they're laughing. And, this girl walks past, she's a waitress. And my one nephew, he looks at the girl like, "Ooh," and I'm looking at, I said,
Yeah.
"Oh, and I'm like, hey, your food's going to get cold." And he's like, "What?" I said, "I saw you checking her out." Then
Yeah.
that brought in the conversation, but we laughed about it first. That brought in the conversation.
Yeah.
I said, okay, he's a young little boy. He's looking into
Yeah.
girls. First, I was
Yeah.
like, well, I told him, I said, first, I want to say, praise God that you're looking at a girl and not a boy, and
Gotcha.
he
Uh-huh.
looked at me like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well," and then we had this little talk at the table, and a talk about a little girl. I said, "So who has a girlfriend?" And neither one of them wanted to confess up that they had a girlfriend. I said, "Well, let's
Mhm.
have our talk," and then we started having our talk, and they started getting embarrassed, and everybody started looking red, and
Yeah.
nobody wanted to face up to who
Yeah.
has a girlfriend. I'm like, "Well, what is it?" Then I said, "Okay, well, let's break it down. What is a friend?"
Uh,
And
Yeah.
they were like, "Well, a friend is, somebody that you just hang out with and you play basketball with." And I was like, "No, that's not a friend." So everybody had their little cell phone. So we looked up what a friend was and we just had this conversation. And it was an enlightening conversation because I truly believe that they walked away basically knowing how to pick friends, how to be around friends, and knowing that, liking a girl being a young boy is not, it's not wrong, but it's not right at a certain age. If you know, if you're not, I'm like, well, you got time for this, time for school now. But they
Yeah.
were like totally embarrassed. And then I got into, because probably previous to that conversation, I had just grabbed it. I had just, an opportunity was open for me to teach kids about STDs and
Uh-huh.
sex and drugs and all these things. And when I got the opportunity to do that with this foundation in Atlanta, the lady, she asked me these questions in regarding my background as being a
Mm,
teenager, and because I had some of the things that she was asking me that I needed to teach the girls and boys from grade 6 to 12, I
mm-hmm.
was accepted for the position, and I was like, whoa! So if I would have tried to keep myself private, I wouldn't have got the
Mm,
position. And
yeah.
the fact that I had to go and discuss STDs, sexual, STDs, abortions, and God, and all those with kids ages from grade 6 to 12. It was just amazing because
Yeah.
at that time he wasn't 6, but he was like in
Mm,
fifth grade, and I was like, wow.
yeah.
So then that made me bring that talk to the table with my nephew and my son,
Yeah.
and they were like, well, what is an
Yeah.
STD? And then I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, well, we won't pull it up right now, but after we got finished eating, I started pulling up these with these STDs. Well, they were like, it was like they were like, yeah. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it is, And but we
Yeah.
had this conversation, and they were like, so like, wow, like I can't believe my aunt was really talking to us at Fridays while we're
Yeah.
ready to finish our
And
dinner, but it was okay.
yeah. And that's freedom. Children, this is what I tell people, children are born geniuses. We make them not to be. We train them not to be geniuses. They come through the world with everything they already need. They come to the world more wise than we are. We're the ones
Mm-hmm.
who've been transformed and programmed. They're not. So they're the most authentic persons in the world. We actually are the ones who train them away from their gifts and their callings. And so oftentimes when you open up conversations to kids like that, and I always tell people what you don't talk about, you walk it out, right? If you don't talk
Mm-hmm.
about it, you're gonna live it. And there's science behind that. Just not a prop. That's just not a good saying, because the left side of your brain, you have two hemispheres in your brain. You have a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere, and they two are connected to each other with a band of tissue, almost like a USB cable called a corpus callosum, right? Most scientists would say that the right side of your brain, for the most part, deals with your feelings and your emotions and your responses, and the left side of your brain deals with your logic, right? And the part of your brain that talks, right, the left side of your brain, the Broca area, it needs the right side of your brain to communicate. Well, if you are traumatized, if you don't talk about what you because the right brain can't talk and the left brain can't feel. So if I can't talk about what I feel, then my feelings are stuck in me, because my words, I have no words for it. It's an actual condition called alexithymia, the inability to express
Wow.
one's emotions, right? And so when you do that, you begin to act out how you feel. And so if I'm angry, instead of saying, hey, I'm angry, I don't know why I'm angry, I show you I'm angry. I take a gun and I shoot you. So now do you hear me? Right?
Wow.
You gave me no other opportunities or avenues to tell you about my pain. And this is what we're doing now with young men in our society and our culture. We're not giving them avenues to share their emotions and pain. We're telling them it's not cool to talk. So they act, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
emotions are a part of who we are, right? You can't hide your emotions. If you try to listen, everybody wants to be in a relationship. That's why people join gangs. Right? Believe it or not, it's one of the strongest pools for the human sex trafficking trade. These pimps, they promise these girls relationships, things that they probably never had before, right? And so we have to get to the understanding that we have to start early. We have to start young. We have to start having these conversations. You
Mm-hmm.
know, we can't say, they're not ready for it. I tell people, children are geniuses. All you have to do is watch a child. They're going to show you how smart they are, right? But because we've
Mm-hmm.
been transformed and we've been programmed, we try to pull them into this matrix, and it is quite natural, particularly for the African American community, because in slavery time, that's how you made your child survive. Right? If they
Mm-hmm.
got too smart for their own good, they would get killed or sold off the plantation. So, as a rule of thumb, we pass this tradition down to our children, where you put your child in that place, right? That's where that
Mm-hmm.
comes from. Right? You
Oh
put
yeah.
your child in the child's place, right? Right. But that came from slavery days, with slave women and men were trying to keep these children from being killed by the masters. But we've taken that same methodology and that same teaching method, and we've taken it and we brought it to our current culture. And so we give our kids no freedom to talk and express themselves. So they go about and do it the way they choose to do it.
And then another thing I've learned too, Kevin, is that when a child is seeking, their body language talks too. When they're
Oh yeah.
seeking attention, or you could watch some of the things that they watch. And I'm very close to my
Hmm.
son. I watch what he watches. I listen to his conversations, and I hear what he talks about. So
Yeah.
one of the things that he watched, I'm always in it, like, "Wait, hey, what's going on? How are you doing today?" I ask him that, like in the
Yeah.
morning. I ask him that in the middle, midday, in the evening,
Uh-huh.
day, whatever. And I don't
Yeah.
see what he thinks, but I know his
Hmm.
body language, and I'm
Yeah.
always in tune with that because we spend a lot of time together.
Hmm. Yeah.
And we just have to really we have to sometimes, not sometimes, we as parents have to learn how to set some time aside to really watch our children and listen to our children and see what they're into, because if they
Yeah.
don't get it from the parents, they're going to get it from the
Oh
streets
yeah. Yeah. They get it from somewhere
or
because
YouTube now.
yeah, they can get it from in. They got little computers in their pockets. They can walk around and get it from anywhere. And so I always tell people, children, I don't even call them children. I call them little humans, right? Little people, because they come. I mean, you just watch them. I'm fascinated by children. I'm fascinated by their willingness to try new things, their willingness to, their curiosity to explore. And so that's why Jesus says, unless you become as a little child, you can't walk in your fulfillment and your purpose, right? You had to get
Mhm.
back to that place where you're curious, where you're wanting to learn, and you wanting to express yourself, and you examine why you feel a certain way. That's one of the things I try to teach men with my Trauma King program, is that when you feel, if you don't express it to nobody else, express it to yourself. Like, I'm feeling this way, because what happens, and what happened with me, I had triggers. So I knew when I felt a certain way, I was either going for alcohol or sex, right?
Mhm.
So I knew that those was numbing mechanisms that I used. I didn't want to deal with my pain, so I used alcohol and sex. And what happens with that, that barrels out of control and leads to addictions. And so what
Mhm.
happens with most addictions, people judge you, right? Even as a minister in church, people judge me. They didn't say, you know, what's causing you and why are you doing it? They say, stop doing it. Stop having sex outside of marriage. Stop drinking. But no one dealt with my trauma that I was trying to mask with
Mhm.
these things. There's a reason there's liquor stores on every corner in certain communities, right? There's a reason they're coming up with CBD, and marijuana is now one of the biggest growing businesses in the world, because they're trying to numb the pain. Here's what I'm going to say. I might get in trouble. You might not have me back.
I got
Jesus
you. Go ahead.
got murdered because he was healing people. When you heal people, you affect the economy, right? When you start healing people, the pharmaceutical companies can't make big bank. The jails and prison systems can't make big bank,
Mhm.
right? The liquor stores, they can't make big bank, right? And so when you start healing people, you
Mhm.
affect the economy, but you empower the people. And that's why, if you noticed, every healer in history gets murdered.
I noticed. Trust me, because I'm one of those people that have been through hell and back in regarding
Yeah,
eating healthy and things like that, drinking and abusing my body from
yeah.
just trying to do the right thing. And I know that there's a lot of things that we need to do, and even they even try. That's why there's a lot of fast food restaurants on every corner, and
Oh yeah, yeah.
you can't find. I mean, there may be like maybe one or two healthy diners in the
But
area,
you
but
you
you'll
know why,
bypass
Tracy?
seven fast food restaurants before you get to the healthy place.
Yeah, you know why? That goes back to what I was talking about sickness, because it goes back to the science, it goes back to the education. When you're in a traumatized state, you're in this fight or flight freeze state all the time, this state of readiness. When you do that, you drain the energy from the brain, and the brain is carbohydrate and sugar driven. It needs energy. And so it gives you cravings to feed this energy, that because you're constantly on 10, right? You need this
Mm-hmm.
energy to feed off of a predator that may not exist, but in your mind it does, because you've been traumatized, or you live in a bad world. So I saw this when I was in Atlanta, and I was at the CNN Center, and I saw this homeless person. She was asking for money, and I said, "Oh man, some guy gave her money. She's gonna go buy something to eat." Because there's a food court, people been sending in. No, there's food. She went and bought 12 donuts. And I was thinking, wow, of all the choices you had, you bought 12. But it made sense when I studied the science behind it. When
Mm-hmm.
you're traumatized, when you're depressed, your brain needs energy to remain in that state that you're always in. You're always in a state of readiness, always in a state of worry, always in a state of anxiety. So these fast food restaurants, they sell you this cholesterol. They sell you these carbohydrates, because your brain produces a craving, because you have been so anxious and so ramped up that you use all your energy and deplete all your resources. So the brain, I always tell people your brain's smarter than you. Your brain's doing things right now that you're not even aware of, but it's protecting you. So
Wow.
what you think is you wanting a burger is your brain tricking you into getting this energy that it needs, this glucose. Why you think most black people have diabetes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we are consuming sugary products, we're consuming carbohydrates, and then on top of that, we're depressed, so we don't move, right? So we get overweight, right? And so then we go get a drink, right? And then we go get the chicken, right?
Fried
This is
chicken and
yeah,
alcohol and oil and all that
yeah.
stuff.
But
And you know
imagine
what?
if I heal you,
You know
if
what,
I
Kevin? It's
heal
amazing
you,
that you're saying it. I'm hearing so much as, I do a lot of driving, and
yeah,
now I'm like, oh, that's why there's all these
yeah,
fast food places, all the whole up and down the turnpike or up and down the
yeah.
highways and byways so you can pull off. And meanwhile, let me tell you what I've learned though, just through
Mhm.
just doing my research and just from my own health and for the things that I've been through. I've
Mhm.
always kept healthy snacks in my car, always. I keep
Gotcha.
my peanuts, I keep raisins, I keep, those things that you can just grab and go. And I can
Uh-huh.
count on my hand how many times me driving 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours on the road that I went to that I've had
Yeah,
to stop at a fast food restaurant for
yeah,
myself. Probably
yeah,
about two. I keep granola bars. I keep all those help. I keep some fruit in my car, and
yeah.
I don't have to worry about that. And now I'm thankful to God. And I have to say this because my son, who's 13, he eats the same way. He'd rather have like maybe some granolas or some peanuts or something like that. There's times where I'm thinking that he wants a burger from, from McDonald's or from whatever fast
Mhm.
food restaurant it is. And he's like, nah, I'll just give me a salad. I'm good.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah,
yay, it's paying off. So I thank God
yeah,
for that. But that's why, it's very important
yeah,
that we have to really think about the things. And you're saying some real good stuff here. And I hope that people are taking
yeah.
note.
Yeah, because it's the world is designed to rob you of your power. And that doesn't sound good, but it's true. Your brain actually does associations. What I mean by that is if your brain knows that yellow arch brings carbohydrate and sugar, you look at that yellow arch along the highways, you made a decision and don't even know you made an unconscious decision. You think you made a conscious decision, stop by and get the burger, but your brain made an unconscious decision for you. But you just responded. I tell people every action you do is a reaction to what you thought. Right? You want to change your action, change your thoughts, right? And
Hey, the
so
Bible says renew your mind, right?
that's it. But most people are so out of sync with with themselves that they don't hear themselves making thoughts. If you notice, there's no such thing as silence. Silence doesn't exist. What we call silence, the absence of sound, is really our inability to hear it. I mean, you think about it. When you're sitting, your mind goes to it. They call it goes into a default mode where it starts thinking about stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Silence don't exist. It just doesn't. In fact, I want you to talk about. We can talk about the power of sound.
Okay,
If
let's
we
let's
go by
let's
the
let's
we
do it.
go by yeah, if we go by the biblical account, the world was created by sound, and God said, right? And so, what you say is really said first in your head.
Mm-hmm.
You're actually creating your world in your head. You're just living it out, right, with your actions. So if you want to change your surroundings and what you see in your world, you change your mind. That's why the Bible said, "Be ye transformed by the
The
renewing of your
renewal of your
mind."
mind.
That is just not scripture, that's science. Because your brain wires itself based on its environment and your thoughts, right? It's called epigenetics, right? And so if you really want to change what you see, and this is the hard part, Trey, this is what's really good people.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna have to change your circle because your friends, right? Jesus says something that's confusing. He said, unless you learn to hate your mother, your father, even your own life, you cannot be my disciple. That sounds crazy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what he's saying is, unless you learn to walk out and be your own authentic self, because believe it or not, you've been shaped. For instance, who gave you the name Tracy?
Mm-hmm. My mom.
Did you have anything to
My
do with
mom.
that?
Nope.
But you answered to it.
That's right.
And if anybody says something about Tracy, you're gonna get offended by it.
Nah, maybe not.
Yeah. But the thing is, you would defend a name that you had nothing to do with. So when God calls you by a different name, you've lived 40 years under the same name meaning my identity.
Mm-hmm.
Your friends strengthen that identity. Your family strengthen. And the first thing you have to do in order to be a success, now this is going to mess with some people.
Oh, that's what it's Friday.
You have to die and be born again.
Amen. Been there.
And so what's dying is that identity, right? So that's what we have to get to. Like, we have to heal. And a lot of times, sickness is connected with our identity. Well, I've always done it this way. If I heal, because if you heal, Tracy, you're going to force people around you either to leave you or to heal along with you. It's only two choices. They can either journey with you or they can depart from you,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's the only choice they get. But if you stay the same, they don't have a choice. They don't need to make a choice because you haven't made one.
Right. That's good. That's a good word. That's a good word.
Yeah.
Now, Kevin, I don't want to lose the fact that, I know the things you went through, and it's just in my spirit stirring up that because of things that are going on today and the people that are watching, I want to tap on the triggers of how mothers, because some mothers miss it a lot of times. I was just fortunate enough to have a lot of male role models around me since I was like younger to older, but there are some women that have not had that. How can a woman see these triggers in her son that he's being messed with or that he's being bothered by someone of the same sex?
Listen to your intuition and not so much your thoughts, because a lot of women, when I'm doing my investigations, they felt it. They just thought, no, this person wouldn't do something like that. Their thoughts contradicted what they felt. And so that's the danger of not learning to trust your emotions. But think about this. A lot of women have been hurt. And when you're hurt, you learn not to trust your emotions. And so what I would tell these women is, if you feel it, if you sense it, one thing you need to do or should do, I won't say need, I'll suggest, one thing you should do is create an open atmosphere with your children so they can tell you anything about anything, right? The second thing is never not believe your child. You know, your children will test you. They'll tell you one thing to see your response to it. And if your response is not what they deem is safe, then they probably won't tell you anything else. They may tell you a secret, and you go off the handle and you tell them, get mad at them. No more. I really can't tell them. Uncle's touching me. Because my mom is so bent on not having sex at all and how dirty sex is. And we never have a conversation about sex or improper touches. So if I tell her, Aunt, touch me, now she having this talk about improper touches and I'm 12 years old, but he's been touching me since I've been 8. I'm a disappointed mom. Because now mom told me later. So what I would say, have the conversation early and often. Give your child an opportunity and provide an atmosphere, a culture. Remember I said what goes grows, right? If secrecy is something that you hold value in your house, then that's what's going to end up happening when something happens to your child. They're going to value the secrecy over the relationship they have with you and the truth. And so if you think about it, we teach children to be secretive, right? We have sayings like, I brought you into this world, I'll take you out. What happens in this house stays in this house, right? Keep crying, I give you something to cry about. So we teach kids not to, and then we teach kids to trust adults. We teach kids don't talk back to adults. And so we don't trust kids. We don't value children the way we need to value children in our culture, because we created an adult world where children have to conform to us and we don't have to listen to them. And so I would say learn how to listen, and not just don't listen to words, because children are very, very careful, particularly how we train them when it comes to talking to adults. Listen to behavior. If your child has a drastic change in behavior, all of a sudden your child like going outside, but they don't like going outside. All of a sudden your child, you going to work and this person who used to keep them, all of a sudden your child has become clingy to you. Mom, don't go to work. Don't just assume that's the child missing you and don't want you to go to work. It could be something way more than that, right? That child could be saying, I'm afraid to stay at home alone because what happens when you leave, I don't like. you know, or if the child, you know, starts shying away from a particular person. You know, children are naturally inquisitive and curious. You know, they're very intuitive, and so when something happens to them where they don't trust, they'll show you, right? They'll show you. And so I would say learn how to listen to your child's behavior and what they don't say, and easily and slowly introduce them to a culture where it's okay to say anything in front of mom or dad. Um,
Now, with that said, we're speaking about children. Now, what about
yeah.
children that have grown into adulthood that, like
Mhm.
yourself, was quiet? You didn't tell anybody for
Mhm.
years
Mhm.
about what happened. How do we
Yeah.
identify them as adults?
Wow. Now that's going to be very, very challenging. And I think one of the ways you do identify with them, again, it goes back to behavior. We speak what you don't talk about, you walk it out, right? So behavior is one of those communication tools that a lot of times we judge, but we don't listen to. And I tell people it's hard to love what you judge. That's why God has to forgive us to love us, right? Because if he
Mm-hmm.
judges us, it's hard to love what you judge. When you judge yourself, it's hard to love yourself. When you start judging people for their actions, it's hard to listen to what they're trying to say. It's hard to hear their pain when you're judging their actions. And I get on a lot of churches for this, right? We talk so much about sin, but we don't talk about the trauma and abuse that causes people to choose the behaviors and actions that they choose. We're too busy trying to cast out demons and not busy dealing with trauma. Because what
Mm-hmm.
normally we're calling demonic is really trauma, right? Back in the day in the Bible, they didn't know what we know today, right? So they thought it was a demon. The kid, the man's son who threw himself down and stuff, they said it was a demon. It could have been epilepsy, we don't know. But we have to actually do the work because healing is work. I always
Mm-hmm.
tell people you don't put ED on heal. Healing is always ing. You're always going to be healing from something. And so I would
Forward
say,
progress.
yeah. So I would say, look at somebody. If they drinking, go back to their childhood, adverse childhood experiences, right? My stepfather drank a lot, and we judged him. It wasn't until he died of a massive heart attack at 50, people started talking about his childhood, right? People started talking about how his dreams of being a musician was lost. He felt like he had no hope. So the drinking was a result of him dealing with his depression. Right? But he was judged. We didn't listen to him. And the question becomes, what if we would have listened and gave an opportunity for him to be honest enough as an African American male to say, I am depressed, I'm hurting. The reason I beat on your mom because I want to control her. Because I fear that she will leave me and I'm not good enough to be with a woman just as good as your mom. So I have to beat her to control her out of my fear that I'll be abandoned.
So then I have a question. If that's a man, I've never had that type of thing happen to me. So if a man beats on a woman, so he feels like he's going to control her.
Oh yeah.
What makes him feel like that's going to stir up? That's not going to stir up something like something else in her that changes that around.
Because going back to what we're talking about, trauma, right? You're trapped, you're prison in your mind. You start thinking you deserve what the man is doing to you. So the man uses what you believe about yourself in order to imprison you. And so if you don't think you're good enough, if I've hit you one time and you stay, you've already communicated to me that you think that, this relationship is more valuable than your safety. So already, as a man, I've already decided that your self-esteem is so low that you're not going to leave me. So I constantly push the issue and I become more manipulative with it and I become more violent with it. And then if you never go anywhere, I got you afraid to go anywhere. Now I'm in control. Men like that are afraid little boys. The men who do that have abandonment issues. They have issues of control and they want to control everything in the situations. And one of the things they see is that the woman never leaves, or if she tries to leave or stand up for herself, there's methods that they use to make her not leave. And so even a woman with great self-esteem can fall into that trap. This is just not a woman who has low self-esteem, a woman with great self-esteem, because they can fall in love with a person, but this person may not be the person they fell in love with. And so oftentimes, going back to what you asked me the question earlier, how do you blame yourself? Oftentimes we're embarrassed that we chose a person to love us that now beats us. And when I was coming up, as a kid, I told my aunts about my stepfather being my mom, and their response, she chose him. And he was like, "Whoa!" As a
Just
kid,
brush it off.
yeah. And they blamed her. They victim blamed, right? And so what happens a lot of times, and I tell people this, victims blame themselves before you ever blame them. So when you blame them on top of their own blame, it puts them deeper into this prison where they don't move. And so a lot of it is embarrassment that I chose a man, or I wasn't bright enough to see this, you know. But oftentimes our desires blind us to facts. You know, we can want something so badly that we don't look at what's in front of us. That's why your girlfriends be saying like, "Girl, he not the one," but you can't see it because you love him. You got feelings for him. Right? Your girlfriend, your grandmama, they'll like,
oh,
no.
grandma sniffs them
Oh,
out quick.
oh yeah, because they're not attached to them. Once you attach to somebody emotionally, it's hard to see, right? It's hard to see in here because you're listening more to your desires than you are your heart, and that's dangerous. But at the same time, you blame yourself. You become your own worst critic because in your mind you chose this person, so you deserve it. You know, while I was telling my mom, I now understand why my mom didn't leave. But now I understand also how bad we made her feel for not leaving. Right?
Right.
The more we talked about her not leaving and she should leave, the more she didn't want to leave because now, you know, we were judging her for staying, and we weren't hearing the pain and she was going through and she was enduring. And right now, you know, my mom seems perfectly fine, but I know based on my education that my mom is mentally ill because she worries a lot. She has anxiety. She thinks the world is a bad place and she's afraid of everything. You know,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
Now, one of the questions that I know you have a book coming out on Godchild. What's that about? Just give us a small snippet of what Godchild's about. I don't want to give
Yeah,
everything away because then they won't buy the book.
yeah. Godchild is about the subtitle is why some systems need to be broken. It's a book. It's out now on Amazon. It's a fictional book about human sex trafficking. You know, a young lady who comes from a great family decides to be a social worker. You know, her parents get mad at her because they want to go to be a lawyer. You know how that is, and she wants to help us work because God has put in her heart to actually help, you know, children who have been abused. And by doing so, she enters into this world in Atlanta she never knew about, this human sex trafficking world. And what she finds out is by trying to get the authorities involved in systems that's supposed to be helping these victims, they're actually doing harm to these victims, right? So she tried to save this young girl, but the girl gets murdered or whatever. You know, you have to read the book, and
Okay.
something happens as a result of that. And so she
And
ends.
so on and so on, right?
Yeah. So it's
Hey, you
called
know what?
God.
Let's talk about real quick. Now you know that there's these parents of these children that were behind these walls down in New Mexico, what have you. They have been
Yeah,
separated from their
yeah,
parents. Let's talk about
yeah,
the mental trauma that. Of course, we don't know exactly all the things that they're going through because we haven't seen them. None of them are speaking. Let's talk about some of the things that these children may incur as far as like mental drama. I guess the separation issues, and some of them can be, or not some of them, or if not most of them can be sexually abused, raped, or been, because
yeah.
we don't know what type of cages or
Mhm.
whatever they're in, and if they're separated from adults, we don't know what type.
Yeah,
There's going to be issues on both ends. There's going to be issues on the parents' end because their children have been snatched away from them, and there's going to be mental issues on the children's side, because they may think that, or may have been told that their parents just walked away from them. Let's
yeah,
talk about some of those
yeah.
issues there that these
And
parents.
you know the sad thing about that is that when these kids grow up, we're gonna see them behave in ways probably because of responding to their trauma, but it's gonna be so removed from what happened to them when they were children that they're gonna get judged by their behavior. And so these children are already traumatized. What troubles me is that we don't have anything in place to bring healing into their lives, not only to them but their parents as well. Because once you traumatize a person, if you don't set up a space for healing, then you're creating danger. You're creating a future where drug and violence can occur. You know, and so oftentimes when we start talking about children and abusing children, this is why Jesus says one of the most harsh things in the Bible, that if you do anything to one of these little ones, it would be better for you to have a millstone tied around your neck and thrown into the sea. That's how serious this is. And so we have to understand that we're shaping our future by how we treat our children. And if we have a gym, and we can build gyms in our community, we can build therapy offices. Right? If we can put liquor stores in our community, we can put a therapist office in our community. I think one of the things that I get, think I get in trouble for, because I tell, I had a friend of mine talk to me the other day about regentrification. Talked about how the people have come into those neighborhoods, and my response was, well, we walked by them, boarded up, took our head at them. They came by and bought them. I mean, you can't get mad at them, right? We could have did the same thing and turned them to spaces and places for people who needed the help, right? But now we're complaining, about them moving us out, right? But those same buildings that were dilapidated when we were just walking by them, they came in and bought.
And not only that, those same places that are being gentrified right now are the same places that people have just abused. I mean, I've been in different neighborhoods and different types of gentrification, and I remember that I was in a neighborhood, and I came from one neighborhood, went to another neighborhood, but the one neighborhood I went from a kind of gentrified type of neighborhood to another neighborhood that was really, really clean, and then I went back to the other neighborhood, and from the clean neighborhood, I was so used to, making sure that, when we pick stuff up off the ground, and, that was just normal behavior, especially if just normal behavior. Then I went to a neighborhood to where I took the trash out, and left it on the curb, and everything was neat when I left it out there that night. And then I go back in, the garbage men came and took the trash. And do you know what? Everything that I put in the garbage bags was all over the ground. So I was living. I'm thinking like, wait, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So when I got home from work that day, I actually seen a gentleman who was dressed in a garbage uniform. And I said, excuse me, can I ask you something? And he says, yes. I says, is it not you guys' duty to pick up the trash, that you left if it did not make it into the trash compactor? And they were like, hey, all we're told to do is just to pick up the trash, get the truck and pick up the trash, and if it falls on the ground, it just falls on the ground. I said, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah. And I told you, it goes back to what goes grows, right? It's the whole broken window theory, right? If you leave a broken window broken for a longer period of time in the neighborhood, then more windows get broken because people see that nobody cares about that window. So let's break some more windows, right? And so there's a reason the Bible starts out with a garden story, right? God gives man a garden, he gives him a responsibility. And one of the ways that God knew that man was in the wrong space was by the condition of the garden. Because God came walking through the garden and saw the condition of the garden and said, wait a minute, where's this gardener that I put here to take care of this? So our communities are a reflection of our condition, our mental conditions. Until we change our minds, we can't change our community. We're doing it backwards. We're trying to change the community without changing people's minds. We're trying to change the criminal justice system without healing people, right? You get them out of jail, but you don't heal them, so they do things to get them back in jail. So the system benefits from that. To heal, you're going to get in trouble because you're going to be affecting the economy. Because pharmaceutical companies, pharmaceutical companies are making a killing, right? And entertainment industries are making a killing. Here's why: entertainment is to distract you away from your problems, so you don't deal with your problems. You see, that's why a lot of times in our communities we listen to these whatever rappers are, all this rap news and whatever, but they living in gated communities while we killing each other.
I totally agree. I mean, I'm a on-air person. I play music all the time, and it was I think it was like maybe last year or year before then. I had did some real deep digging before I took on but God gifted me with doing radio, and I found out that there were certain songs that were put out in the universe during certain times for immorality and fidelity and all these things. And I never thought of it as that. I'm like,
think
wow.
About that. You're a spirit. You respond to vibrations. If you put music on, a little baby will start moving their body, right? They don't even know what the word is saying. They only know the beat rhythm, but their little spirits would match the vibration of the music, right? So that shows you how powerful sound is. If you tell a kid they'll never be anything, they stupid, they'll grow up thinking that, believing that, and they'll grow up creating what they believe. We recreate what we believe about ourselves. And so if you got music telling young men that women are just good for sex and stripping and making money, then they think it's okay to take a young
Hmm.
lady and put her in the streets. I grew up in Memphis. 8 Ball MJG. It's hard out here for a pimp. Won an Oscar, right? the Academy won't give us Oscar award, but they gave It's Hard Out Here for a Pimp an Oscar, right? Because it
Wow.
was a movie about pimping. And then here's the irony of it. You know who they had present the award? Queen Latifah, the woman who
Wow.
said, "Who you calling the bitch?" And yet they had her present the award, and she was jumping up and down screaming because It's Hard Out Here for a Pimp got an award, and the Queen was the
Wow.
one. Come on, this stuff is this ain't
Mind
accident.
games. Those are
Yeah,
mind
this ain't
games.
accident. This is planned. And until we wake up and start thinking about healing, and once healing becomes your prerogative and priority, it automatically wakes you up to the things in our culture and our society that's causing us to be sick. Right? Jesus was a healer, but he also was
Amen.
an educator. Right? So we must not separate the two. We must educate ourselves on the healing process and must get away from this idea that we can just lay hands and pray about it and be done with it. This is work,
Amen.
and it takes a
And
community.
now what we're going to have to, what we're dealing with now, Kevin, is we're dealing with nurses and doctors and all these, everyone that has to be at the bedside
Hmm.
at the dying COVID-19 patients. And, it was just, I think a couple of days ago where it was like the highest rate ever of dying, people dying from
Yeah,
COVID-19. So their mental is, their whole purpose was to go in and make people well. And
yeah,
that's been turned over. Now there's like nothing they can do about this
yeah.
COVID-19. People are
That's
dying
it.
at the drop of a hat. So their mental is crazy. They have to visually just replay these scenes, these bodies, and talking to this patient this day, and then the next day they're gone. I mean, thousands of people. So now we're going to have to really dig in and pray for, or see how we can help nurses and doctors and
Yeah,
those people get back to, to a level ground.
yeah,
It's just crazy.
yeah. And the positive thing about it is, going back, in the beginning there was darkness, right? And then
Mhm.
God said to be light. Everything was in chaos. Chaos always precedes change. What I see outcoming, what people see as bad happening, I see as a move that's about to change the whole trajectory of our world. And
Amen. I believe that.
that's what darkness always precedes light. And so God has to prepare us to be ready to cry. You notice God produces a cry, and then he responds to that same cry that he produced. And so until we come together and cry together in unison, cry together until we reach heaven in this dark time, that's when we're going to see the move of God. And we're going to see it in such a way that it's going to be undeniable. So those in power are afraid of that move. And that's why they're shaking and they're doing everything they can to keep and hold on to power, just like Pharaoh did. Right? They're
Mhm.
panicking because it's coming. The move of God is already here. It's just people haven't realized it yet. But people like you and I know that, hey, it's here. And God is about to move in a mighty way. So
He sure
I'm
is.
excited about that.
He is, and I'm not concerned. I know that God is in control of everything that's going on, and then it's in the Bible. It's in
Yeah.
Revelations. Everything, I remember like 10 to 15 years ago, there was this lady in the state in Pennsylvania. She used to stand on the corners and say, the world is coming to an end. Y'all better get ready. I was
Mhm.
scared. I'm like, well, you mean
Yeah.
tomorrow? I'm not gonna be able
Yeah.
to go to Dunkin' Donuts tomorrow. I mean, I was scared. I was
Yeah.
petrified. And then I went to my grandmother and talked to her about it. And we went straight to the Bible, and she showed me in the Bible where it says, no man or woman knows the
Hmm.
time or the day. And then when I see that lady next day, I'm like, oh, like, go on, lady. Ain't nobody got time for that. So it was about
Yeah.
educating me. But I do know that the word is speaking of what is
Yeah.
going on right now. I do know that.
Yeah.
These
And
are these.
the world ending is not necessarily the cessation of time or the ceasing of time itself. It means that the world as you know it gone, right? And I
Mhm.
think or is ending the world that we knew, and God is ushering in this whole new kingdom. That's what Jesus was talking about when he said, I'm ushering in the kingdom, because the world you once knew is now being ushered out, and I'm ushering in this new kingdom. And the problem was we was trying to hold on to that world that we had so tight. This is the whole purpose of the desert wanderings, right? I got you out of Egypt, but you brought Egypt with you, right?
Mhm.
so, uh, and I think that's what's going to end up happening. I'm speaking to people that you're going to have to let go of of what you're used to, or what you're accustomed to, and you have to stay positive, man. You have to stay positive, because if you're not positive, you're not going to see the light. You're not going to see the doors, the opening, and opportunities that are coming. So that's why I love this type positive vibes. We have to stay positive. Find something to be positive about. Believe me, there's something to be positive about. You woke up this
Amen.
morning,
Amen.
you
And
can
you know what,
find
Kevin?
something to be
That is the whole idea around, well, it's not my idea. This was something that God had given to me before. I mean, first I had the Uplift radio show, and
yeah,
I moved into positive vibes when I started to study. I started to study wealth, health, and
yeah.
and life, long life. And I asked God before, I went on the assignment to do on air radio with positive. I asked him to give me something that will help people understand the vibes that they listen to can be life or death. I mean, you can listen
Hmm.
to something, it can be the death of you. You can be
Yeah,
around a vibration, and it can just ruin your whole entire mood. So
yeah.
that's why positive vibes was built.
Yeah, and it's doing great work, and I can feel the vibe and the energy coming from it. And so that's why we have to always be positive. Now, being positive don't always mean you're going to feel good. It just means that that things is going to get better. That's hope, and so that's what positive means. It means despite what's going on around you, there's something in you that's worthy and worth to push forward to make sure it manifests itself. So everybody has that small seed. God blesses. He blesses the seed. Particularly, I tell people we're the only seed that God gave the ability to plant itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so where you plant yourself and how you plant yourself will determine the fruit you're going to get out of your life.
And look, and don't forget now, a seed has to go into a dark place, right?
Got to.
Got
Seed
to.
can't grow without dirt. If you think about it, everything that's precious in the world, God hid. Think about that. I mean, you and I, we were hidden in the womb for 9 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
God hides what he cherishes. Like that's why gold and diamonds all this in the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it takes time and it takes curating and it takes care and it takes heat and it takes friction and it takes pushing, right? So yeah, your growth in process, you know. You gotta deal with the friction and the heat, the dirt, the pressure. I love trees. I tell people the thing I love about trees, no matter how many storms come by, they stick
They
together.
sway and they just sway, they don't
Yeah,
move, and the roots are
yeah.
deep.
They stick together too, right? Yeah,
Amen.
yeah,
The roots are
yeah,
deep. And then, there is a scripture in the Bible that says, no matter, if your roots are planted, no matter how far the sweet
yeah,
trees sways from the left or the right,
yeah.
when you're in the place that you're supposed to be in, you won't move.
That's it. Planted by the rivers of life, right? And
Amen.
so that's
Amen. You
it.
got it.
Yeah.
You got it.
Mhm.
Well, Kevin, what I want you to do is, it's about 8 minutes before we leave the show. I don't want to leave without giving someone the opportunity to get saved today. If you can
Okay.
minister that into them, I always want to make sure that I do my part, and not just to be one-eyed or one-sided. I am saved. I know that there's someone out there that may think that they have done so much wrong that
Mhm.
God cannot save them, or that they cannot be sin. Cannot be forgiven. There's someone out there that may have been in your situation, that may have been touched inappropriately at a young age, and have
Yeah.
yet to come forth with telling their mothers, their brothers, their sisters, or someone of an
Mhm.
adult age that this is something that has happened to them. How
Mhm.
can we how can we help them get through that stage right now, by coming to them and with the word of God?
Yeah, I think, one of the things that helped me was the word of God. The questioning, why did it happen? I finally come to understand that this is the type of world we live in. But we serve a God that can interject and intervene in your life, but has to be invited into your life, right? This is a God who's such a loving God that he won't force or won't bombard or won't rush or won't abuse you, right? To the point where he forces himself on you. But if you invite him, man, I can tell you from the experience, the invitation for God to come in and say, I don't understand everything. I don't even understand everything. I don't even know if I want to. I know I'm hurting. I know this pain is unbearable. And I know I use some coping mechanisms. For me, it was sex and alcohol, right? It didn't make me a bad person. It just meant something bad happened to me. And I didn't know how to cope because I didn't have God. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't understand how God wanted me to cope with it. But God said, I didn't want you to cope with it. I wanted you to bring it to me. And so if you brought it to me, I can show you other ways in which you can do what I called you to do. Son, I'm not judging you. Daughter, I'm not judging you. I'm loving you. You're judging yourself and the world judges you, but I love you. And so if I love you, there are no judges because I'm the ultimate judge. So I want somebody to know and understand that no matter what you've gone through, Don't look at your actions as bad. Look at your God as one who can help you understand why you do what you do. And that's when you get the power, when you understand, yeah, I take the drink because I don't want to feel the pain associated with my childhood. And so once you know where the pain comes from, it gives you power over the pain. And then you can make better decisions. And God is with you every step of the way. Don't you ever think in one moment, in one iota of your life that God has left you. God will never leave you, no matter what you do. But the best thing you can do is invite God in and say, God, I need your help. Help me, God. You don't need an elaborate prayer. You don't need to go through all the Bible and the scriptures. That's a prayer right there. Help me, God.
Mm-hmm.
That prayer right there can be the most powerful prayer that you can have in your arsenal. And you can utter it anytime. Even when, like me, when you have that drink in your hand, lifting the cup, you can still say, help me, God. And God is still here.
And let me tell you something. I was at a state in my life where I needed, help. I was going through not trauma, but I won't say trauma. I was just going through some things in my life, not growing up and not knowing why things happened, the loss of friends, the loss of cousins and things like that to violence. And, I went to the Bible myself and I asked God. I said, help me, God, do what you need to do in order for me to be the person I need to be in you. Now, the thing is, when you ask God to do this, I mean, you can't put any type of, I guess you would say timeline or limitation as to how he's going to do it. And when God delivered me, he delivered me in a way that it was immediate deliverance. So I thank God for that. But had I done it, the way that I should have done it, it would have been a little bit lighter, but he did it. I asked and he did it. And it was a great experience. Let me tell you something. I'll be 50 next year. I am living the most healthiest life that I could have ever lived in my life, to be honest with you. And I'm telling you that God is great, y'all. I want you to know that it's not, today is not the last day that you can do that. This second is not the last second that you can do that. You can do that now. If God, whatever God did for me, he could do for you. This is Positive Vibes with your girl Traley, Kevin, McNeil. And the same thing that God did for Kevin to deliver him from all the things that he went through, he could do the same for you. He could put you on a platform that would allow you to usher in those who need a platform to stand on, just like Positive Vibes is for you and all those who are watching today.
Yes. But thank you, Tracy. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I'll release like back in the day we used to play. I'll release the den. You can go and make sure that they did what they were supposed to do in your house. I truly appreciate your time, Kevin. You have been a blessing, a wealth of knowledge, and you can always come back and let us know what's going on with you. My prayers are with you, your family, and your mom, and with everybody. And may Gold Child hit the top of the charts, and may everything that you do be blessed. Your hands be blessed, and may the blood of Jesus continue to saturate your body, your mind, your spirit, and your soul. Thank you guys so much for tuning into Positive Vibes with Kevin McNeil. Don't forget, guys, he's available for speaking engagements. I want you guys to be professional. I want you guys to be righteous, and I want you guys to do what you need to do if you're looking to to have this man come to your events. And I don't know if there's any limitations. Kevin, you can let them know that before we leave.
No, there's no limitations. That's you can call me and reach me through my phone number, my website, and my assistant will get back with you. I love doing what I do, and I love what God is using me to do. And so I look forward to meeting everyone. And if you just want to give me a shout out, say hello, that's fine too.
And you have an Instagram. What's your social tags before we get off? We have about 1 minute.
I have 2 Instagrams. One particular for men that gears towards men is at @DTrauma King. It's my Instagram for that. And the other one is Kevin_McNeil_. So you can reach me on either one of those Instagram taglines.
You might have to get one for kids, Kevin. So
I do. Kids, I never thought about that.
So the kids can reach out to you on a level. Of course, you would get approval if they're under a certain age from their parents to talk to you openly about some of the things that they're going on. I think that was just something that God placed in my spirit for me to shout out to you, maybe a kids line to where they can talk to you about some of the things they may have encountered or some of the things that they have, they can't speak to their parents and they're afraid to. I think that would be a great opportunity.
Oh, definitely. Thank you for
Hey, and
that.
let me know when you're ready to launch, and you can always come on Positive Vibes and let the children know I am engaged with a lot of not engaged, but I teach a lot of children. I
Okay.
am in cahoots with a lot of children. Sometimes it can be 300 plus children that I'm talking to in one day, and I
Okay.
know that they're out there. They're cheerleaders, they're football players, they're
Hmm.
soccer players, they're small business leaders, they're kidpreneurs. There are a lot of places. They're going to be going a lot of places. We want to make sure that
Yeah.
they're safe. We want to make sure that they understand the environment that they're in and understand that they can renew their mind. And if they're scared, that they can always come to you, Kevin. I
Oh, thank you.
appreciate that so much.
Thank you. I would definitely be working on that. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
guys. Have a happy Friday. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and don't overindulge. Wear your mask, wash your hands, and practice social distancing. God bless you guys. Be safe and enjoy times with your families.
Bye bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.